Well, Florida State has been very, very bold about wanting to get out of the ACC, to say the least. But have they been a little bit too bold? And will that hurt their chances to get into the Big Ten or the SEC? Plus, who would be coming with them out of the ACC? Welcome into the channel. I am John Kurtz. Here on this channel, we talk college football, conference realignment, college basketball, all from a Big 12 slant. Please consider subscribing if you have not. Live shows Wednesdays and Sundays. They are a blast. Very lively. Ton of people in here. Great time. You do not want to miss that. Please like the video, leave a comment in the comment section. All of that stuff really helps, and you can support the channel on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. First of all, Merry Christmas. Hope everybody had a great holiday with the family and friends. And now we turn our attention back to the one thing on everybody's mind around the holidays, of course, conference realignment, because it is coming hot and heavy right now. And Florida State is the reason for that, having a meeting a board meeting, that is, on the Friday before Christmas, to outline their plans to sue the ACC, which they did. The ACC also has followed suit and is involved in a legal battle the other way against Florida State. I'm going to read to you from Pete Thamel here, who outlines what the odds are that Florida State gets into the Big Ten or the SEC in some ways that they may have actually hurt themselves. I'll start with this. This is a pretty funny anecdote to start the story. Pete Thamel says, quote, in many ways, any immediate action by FSU or others to explore legally unwinding from the ACC grant of rights gives them a 6-month legal runway before they'd actually have to make a decision to exit. Just a little bit of framework here. We know that August 15th is the date, that like drop dead date where they would have to announce their intentions to leave for the 25-26 school year. But here's a hilarious quote from a source at Florida State. Quote, Florida State isn't leaving tomorrow, said a Florida State source. Who says they want to leave immediately? Who says they are ever going to leave? If that's not emblematic of Florida State's whole attitude toward this, I don't know what is. Pretty brazen, trying to play us all for stupid, very stupidly coy there from Florida State. So, hey, we'll see if the arrogance pays off for the Seminoles or not. Thamel says, as of now, there are really only two potential destinations, and an invite to the SEC or Big Ten is not certain or imminent. The only certainty, now or down the road, is that neither league would want a hint of legal exposure. Also, the schools in those leagues aren't going to take less money for new members to join. That means there'd have to be some type of clear discount rate for any school before the leagues got formally involved. And the precedent has clearly been set there by SMU, taking no money for 9 years, and then a reduced share for Cal and Stanford as well in joining the ACC. One issue FSU will have to overcome is the self-inflicted wounds from its own public behavior toward the ACC in recent months. They have made commissioners and presidents cringe as they envision that's what FSU would be like as a league member. That's a headwind FSU will have to overcome as it eventually courts other leagues. I mean, that is so true. Like, Florida State will probably get in the SEC or the Big Ten. Don't misconstrue my statements here. If they're able to get out of the ACC, there would probably be a landing spot for them. But Florida State needs each of those conferences much, much more than those conferences need them. I mean, the Big Ten obviously is doing very well financially with the massive TV contract that they just signed. They just added Oregon and Washington and USC and I suppose UCLA as well. They have just taken in a massive windfall here that's going to help them financially. Then on the other side, the SEC, why do they need anybody? I mean, they're about to embark on the 16-team league with Texas and Oklahoma. They are still clearly the power. Greg Sankey is the biggest power broker basically in all of college athletics right now. Their commissioner. They don't need anybody. They already have a presence in the state of Florida. In particular, the SEC really does not need Florida State. They've got the University of Florida. Everybody in the state of Florida is going to watch SEC football regardless of whether or not Florida State is there. So do they want to upset the apple cart in what seems to be a pretty perfect SEC ecosystem right now? Why would you want to take the chance of bringing in the loudmouth Florida man neighbor and upsetting everything there? That is something to monitor here, and Pete Thamel is pointing that out. This is the best, most well-connected reporter, in my opinion, in the game right now for ESPN, and he's saying that could be a hurdle here for the Noles. Thamel goes on to say, this could all unfold amid a distinct bear market in media for sports rights that industry sources say could make additional conference expansion unappealing to media partners. Without new TV money coming in, any new members will likely need to join at a discount rate as Oregon and Washington did in the Big Ten. The part that few are saying out loud about Florida State is that it, along with Clemson, are likely not the most coveted ACC schools in the eyes of the Big Ten and the SEC. And boy, hide this one from Tallahassee. They're not going to want to hear that at all. We've seen their case in these board meetings before about the eyeballs that are on their games, that they're a top 10 brand in terms of viewership across the country. But this is something we have heard multiple times, that they would not be the most coveted out of the ACC. North Carolina and Virginia would both represent new markets and states for both leagues. They're also contiguous states, which the SEC has always valued. So states that all link together, right? We're talking about geography. The SEC is basically the only league that still makes any sense geographically. It's a competitive battleground that allows one league to expand north to new markets and another to potentially go south. While Virginia and North Carolina aren't in the same hemisphere as Clemson and Florida State in football, they do add robust new markets and fertile recruiting grounds for two competitive leagues and commissioners who want to capture those areas. So he's naming that as basically another hurdle. Like, hey, if they're going to expand, if these leagues that seem pretty content right now were going to expand, would they actually want Florida State or would they want somebody else from the ACC? Again, not a crystal clear path for Florida State as of right now. As far as who would follow Florida State out of the ACC, here's what Thamel says. Reports earlier this year had pinned Clemson and Florida State in lockstep, but that doesn't appear to be how this would unfold. Clemson and North Carolina have been in close touch on this, per sources, and they likely observe and then follow FSU at some point. The timing of that might depend on both the legal read of what FSU is doing and a snapshot of how difficult the path looks to follow them. North Carolina Athletic Director Bubba Cunningham was critical of FSU this summer, calling the public chatter about leaving the ACC, quote, barking. But there's also a bottom line reality at UNC that it needs to look out for its best long-term interests, as it knows it is the most coveted brand, not named Notre Dame, that's not in a Power 2 league. The Tar Heels aren't going to stick around the ACC for sentimental reasons if a clean path to an upgrade is available. Very true. I mean, that does seem to be the consensus, that it would be Notre Dame 1, North Carolina 2 in terms of most valuable brands still left on the board. Complicating matters for UNC and potentially impacting timing is the departure of their chancellor to Michigan State in recent weeks. While Neff has been Clemson-centric in his comments and generally positive about the ACC, he's been consistent in indicating that Clemson's options are open. The school has hired outside consultants and taken the obligatory trips to the ACC headquarters for grant of rights exploration. Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody's under the illusion that Clemson would just sit this one out if Florida State were to leave. Miami certainly falls in line with the financially aggrieved in the ACC, but it doesn't appear poised for any immediate action. Virginia has done modest exploration, but is not as far down the road as some other ACC schools. And schools like NC State and Virginia Tech have had all the discussions, but the available spots on the Power 2 dance card are clearly limited. Yeah, that's an interesting tier, and that's where, you know, as we talk about the Big 12 here on this channel, NC State and Virginia Tech are potential targets there for the Big 12 if this thing were to totally go downhill and blow up. There's been talk about, like, hey, would the legislature in North Carolina and or Virginia want to keep everybody together? Would the SEC and or Big Ten feel obligated to take both? I'm sure that is still a possibility. They probably have a puncher's chance there. But when push comes to shove, things are getting pretty crowded. And as we just outlined, even a Florida State or a Clemson would probably have to take a pay cut to join one of these conferences, or just take a reduced share. It's not a pay cut, but a reduced share when joining one of these conferences. So what does that mean for an NC State or a Virginia Tech that would be lower down the totem pole? That is certainly something that would still have to get sorted out. Any notion of an immediate demise of the ACC would be exaggerated. So another thing to emphasize here, we're in for a long road, because this will not clear up quickly. Florida State and the ACC, it looks like we'll have a prolonged legal battle here. It's not something where you'll be able to just snap your fingers and change everything overnight and have the ACC completely implode. It is certainly headed on that trajectory, and Florida State seems bound and determined to get out come hell or high water, or private equity, whatever it is going to be for the Noles. But it's not like the ACC is going to blow up tomorrow. So when we talk about the Big 12, I've used the term aggressively lurking. I think that's what Brett Yormark and the Big 12 needs to do. Right now, they just need to be aggressively lurking, waiting for the scraps to start to fall if this thing does, in fact, implode. Thamel finishes off by saying, it's clear the league's biggest football brands and biggest overall brands lack faith in the league having the financial fundamentals to be an incubator for championship football for the long term. And that makes the upcoming months critical for how the league will look in the future. That, I think, everybody can agree with. It appears that there is not much faith in the ACC as it's currently constituted in figuring things out to close the gap financially between them and the Big Ten and the SEC. And unfortunately, in today's realignment reality, that means you're going to be facing a doomsday scenario where the conference could implode. And if you think it's not realistic, don't have to look any further than this past summer to see it actually happen to the Pac-12. So very, very well could happen in the ACC. Probably not going to be imminent, but it will likely happen at some point. So stay tuned here on the channel. We'll make sure to keep you updated. Live shows Wednesdays and Sundays. Please consider subscribing if you have not. click that bell so you get alerts and know when it is that I'm going live. That is an easy way to stay in touch as well. Let me know in the comments what you think. Do you think Florida State is being too brash here? Would you want them in the Big Ten or the SEC if you are a Big Ten or SEC fan? All those comments help with the algorithm, so I much appreciate it. And if you want to support the channel financially, you can do so at John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. Appreciate all of you being here. Stay tuned for the live show coming up on Wednesday. I will talk to you guys soon.